Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
And greetings. Thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, I am so happy to bring on board as our guest, Mr. Jeff Chilton. Jeff studied ethno-mycology at the University of Washington. That means he is a mushroom expert. Throughout his career, his focus has been on the production and research of edible and medicinal mushrooms. He introduced medicinal mushrooms to the U.S. nutritional supplement industry. Jeff is the author of the highly acclaimed book, The Mushroom Cultivator. His company, Nammex, that's Nammex, offers a complete line of certified organic mushroom extracts to the U.S. nutritional supplement industry, which are quality based on scientific analysis of active compounds. And Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today right here on Herbally Yours.
Hi, Ellen. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Share with me the right way to say your last name.
Chilton.
Okay, I was close.
You had it.
Now, you definitely have a very strong focus on one thing, and that is all things mushroom.
Absolutely.
What led you to that way back in the late 60s?
Well, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and actually we're the home of a lot of rain. It's very green, and in the fall we have a very robust mushroom season, and so I grew up with mushrooms all around me all the time, and then when I went to university in the late 60s, I decided to take that interest and study mushrooms. So I studied mushrooms at university and also anthropology. But when I graduated, there was no jobs in anthropology. So what do? I thought, well, it would be great to learn how to grow mushrooms. So in 1973, I went to the only mushroom farm in Washington State, got a job. Stayed there for the next 10 years. I literally was living with mushrooms.
So that's so interesting. And, I really love when I do career counseling, which I do almost daily with people who would like to have a career in natural medicine. It's called career counseling with the natural nurse. And that's something that you did, which I always say is a wonderful line to follow, which is find your interest and
Absolutely.
make that your life's work.
I tell people the same thing. I say, follow your passion. Maybe it's not going to make you a lot of money, but you'll at least be doing what you want to do. And if you can do something really well, at some point somebody's going to pay you for it.
That's true. I will say, in terms of WHPC right here, the station that we're having you on today as a guest, I recently went to a webinar that they ran, and it was actually a seminar, an on-ground seminar in an auditorium room, and so many of the people said that, just do what you love. And, it might not be based on what you're going to make the most money at, but, you spend a lot of time working. So why not have it be what you love to focus on? And you certainly did that.
Absolutely, yes, I did. Yeah, you know what? From 1973 to 1983, I worked on this mushroom farm. It was a very large farm. They grew 2 million pounds of agaricus mushrooms every year. But while I was there, we had a Japanese scientist, and he was growing shiitake, oyster mushroom, and nokitake. He just opened up the world to me in terms of growing other mushrooms. So I was very focused on how to grow mushrooms, and during that period I also learned about the properties of mushrooms as medicines and the fact that they'd been used for thousands of years in traditional Chinese medicine. That later led me to start my company in 1989, supplying medicinal mushroom products to the supplement industry.
Well, certainly a major focus. You know, a lot of people, all they know about mushrooms is just sort of the white ones that you buy in the grocery store, and that if they see anything called a mushroom outside, it's poisonous and can kill you.
Well, that's true, and the fact of the matter is we're just catching up right now. In Asia, they've been eating at least 12 mushrooms for thousands of years. Mushrooms have been used in traditional Chinese medicine. In Europe, especially Eastern Europe, Russia, they've been eating lots of mushrooms for thousands of years. For some reason, in North America, we've only really had this one mushroom and only one mushroom cultivated, and that is now changing. Now we have growers in North America that are putting other mushrooms, and in fact, mushrooms like shiitake and maitake, which are not only prime edible mushrooms, but they also have medicinal qualities. And so, in a sense, I look at mushrooms as one of the premier foods as medicine.
You know, and that is so true, because it is an amazingly evidence-based. There is so much science behind the use of mushrooms. And when you say mushrooms, you know, that's a big category, so we do need to bring it down to specific mushrooms.
Correct, yes. And in fact, you know, all mushrooms have what are called beta-glucans, and beta-glucans make up the cell walls of mushrooms, and those beta-glucans are what give us immunological benefits. So that's what makes a mushroom medicinal. All mushrooms have these beta-glucans, but the beta-glucans will have different architectures, and that architecture is very important for its activity. So some mushrooms, although they have the beta-glucans, they don't have a very strong medicinal qualities, whereas others have very high levels of benefits due to these beta-glucans and the very specific architecture.
Yes, in fact, maitake is one where they're actually isolating bio-beta-glucan. And I know in other countries in Asia, they actually incorporate the use of these beta-glucan extracts along with chemotherapy in cancer care right in the mainstream medical centers.
No, that's absolutely right. In Japan, actually, they developed a drug called PSK, and it comes from the turkey tail mushroom, and that is used as an adjuvant during cancer therapy. They also developed a pure beta-glucan from shiitake mushroom called lentinan that they actually used in the same way. So yes, there are approved drugs in Asia that have been derived directly from these mushrooms that we would look at as prime edible species.
And some of the research is astounding, because even if they do choose to also use more standard chemical chemotherapy in those cases, they find that there is much better outcome and that they can use a lower level of the toxic chemotherapy and actually have a higher level of effect.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, you know, one of the things about chemotherapy or radiation is it will destroy a person's immune system, and the whole purpose of adding these mushroom drugs or even mushrooms to when you're going through something like that is to help modulate and boost your immunity during that period. During a period when your immune system is being torn down, this is something that can help it and strengthen it during that period.
So, of course, you can always use these mushroom extracts, you know, for a cold and flu, let's say. You don't have to wait till it's an extreme case, such as cancer. But I really wonder why this integrative approach is not standard of practice as it should be, according to the evidence, according to the cost factor, according to the adverse ratio effect. Why isn't it integrated in the United States?
Well, I think for the same reason that herbal medicine is not integrated in the United States. I mean, we have right now a separation of medical communities, and although there is something now called integrative medicine, and there are practitioners out there, I think this is just something that is coming. But you know how these things work. They're very slow moving, and it takes time for more and more people to accept the fact that there are certain modalities that they can integrate with what they practice.
That is true. So isn't it amazing that the research is so powerful and strong? While it has been used traditionally for thousands of years, and now that we have the scientific validity, it's just a no-brainer to incorporate these into your life.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that I do in my business and the way I approach it all is I look at the mushrooms that have been used in traditional Chinese medicine. And you know what, Ellen, there are at least 270 species that have been listed by the Chinese in a book that I have that they claim have medicinal properties. Well, what do you do at that point? So what I do is I look at which ones specifically have been used in a major way in traditional Chinese medicine, and then I go and I look at the scientific literature, and there is a strong body of literature that has been, and research that has been done on very specific mushrooms. So I put the two together, and then I come up with about 10 or so species that not only have been used traditionally, but also have a very large body of scientific evidence that demonstrates the fact that these particular mushrooms have medicinal effects and benefits.
Well, I want to remind our listeners that you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, and my guest today is mushroom expert, Mr. Jeff Chilton. And thank you so much for that, Jeff. Yeah, so you decided to really focus in on species that does have both traditional use and scientific validity.
Absolutely, yes. And so, and what that does, of course, is it allows us to, rather than, for example, be a company that is selling 101 different herbs or something like that. My focus all along has been with mushrooms, and that has allowed us to do things that other companies have not done. One of the things that I am so passionate about is I will do a lot of testing. We do all sorts of analyses on our products to guarantee that those mushroom products have the active compounds in them. And I consider this to be so important because there are so many products out there that do not actually guarantee the active compounds in there and might be full of fillers and other materials. And let me tell you, the mushroom category is no different than any of the others. There are products that I would consider to be good and others that really are not.
Right, that's true about anything. From soup to nuts, actually. And in a free market, nobody is mandating, but consumers do have a choice. So something that they could actually look for. Now, I know you have a focus also on producing organic mushrooms. What does that about?
I totally believe in organic certification. My company's been certified since 1992. And look, Ellen, you know what? When I was working on the mushroom farm, this large mushroom farm from 1973 to 1983, oh my goodness, they had a program of chemical use from start to finish. There were so many chemicals, fungicides, pesticides that were used on that crop. It is better today, but I am totally devoted to organic certification. And listen, I also understood as a mushroom grower that you really can't grow mushrooms in North America and sell them as supplements. It's too expensive. Mushroom growing is expensive. You can sell them as food, no problem, but as a supplement you have to dry those mushrooms out, and all of a sudden you might be getting $5 a pound for your fresh mushrooms. Now you have to get $50 a pound because mushrooms, like most vegetables, are 90% water. So what I did, and I traveled extensively in China in the 1990s, is I organized growers in China, and in 1997 I took OCIA, which is one of the top U.S. certifiers, to China, and we had the very first organic certification workshop for mushrooms in China. And today
we'll talk about that a little further, but we do need to take a break right now. And Also, I want to shout out your website, Nammex, that's NAMMEX.com, for people to learn more beyond today's show. And I'd like to remind you, listeners, you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live, online at nccradio.org or on iHeartRadio. For more information on today's guest or topic, email whpc@ncc.edu. Stay tuned. Herbally Yours will be right back.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
And welcome back. Two more right here on The Natural Nurse and Dr. Z. Oh, I'm sorry, this one's Herbally Yours right here on Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College. And we are speaking to Mr. Jeff Chilton, and he is all things mushroom. He wrote a book called The Mushroom Cultivator, and he's talking about why in his company, Nammex, that's NAMMEX.com, he is very interested in offering organic mushrooms. So you were telling us that you actually went to China and began organic growing operations. Now, in China, do they get a USDA organic certification, or is there some other kind of certification?
Oh, no, it's USDA certified. In fact, the certifiers are German certifiers and very high-quality German certifiers. And you know, here's what I totally understand when people are a little bit worried about food products coming out of China. I share their concerns. But what we do before any of our products are even shipped out of there, we test them for pesticides, we test them for heavy metals, we test them for microorganisms, and then once they land in the United States, we test them again for the same things, heavy metals, pesticides. So they are tested at least twice, and believe me, we can't sell our products unless they meet those standards. So no, they are very high quality. They pass all the tests, and you know what? Again, like I said, the only way that we could offer medicinal mushroom extracts to the supplement market was by producing them in China. Producing mushrooms is not cheap, and you know mushrooms are still actually harvested by hand.
Oh, that must take a long time.
Yes, believe me. And you know, when I was working on the mushroom farm in the 70s, each house would be producing 20,000 pounds of mushrooms, and it would be like looking at a bed, and it would be covered with tens of thousands of mushrooms, and each one of those had to be pulled out of that soil by hand. So it's a very tedious, very expensive. It's something that's a true bottleneck, and due to that, as well as a few other factors, it's just too difficult to actually grow them in the United States and offer them as supplements. Again, because of the fact that once you dry them out, now you have to get 10 times as much money for that dried product. The economics do not work. And think about it for a second, too, Ellen, in terms of what if I wanted to make, for example, a 4-to-1 or 8-to-1 or 10-to-1 extract where I need 10 pounds of that dry raw material to make 1 pound of extract. That extract would be just way too expensive.
This is true. So you find that, of course, the cost of labor is much, much less in China than it is here.
Well, you know what's interesting? This is so interesting. China grows 85% of the world's mushrooms. 85%. Can you imagine? And not only that, they started growing mushrooms in the 12th century. They have a long, long history of mushroom growing. It's fascinating what they've done. So they've developed this, and they have tens of thousands of small growers, not large corporations, small growers that are producing these crops. So we have a number of contract farms that we work with, and every year I go over there and I audit these farms, and again, they're audited by the certification people, and they do a fantastic job, and they grow their mushrooms far, far away from the polluted areas. And let's face it, I mean, even in the United States, the amount of chemicals that are put on the produce and the all of the other fruits and things is staggering. And that's why I support organic agriculture 100%. Even here, that's where I buy my fruits and vegetables, is from my local organic market.
That's true. I do the same thing. That's how I grocery shop. I first go to my local farms, and very often they don't even have an organic certification because that's so expensive. They just don't use pesticides, and they tell me right to my face, and they're the farmer, and they say, I'm not going to put it on because I give my kids the food here. I believe them. Yep. Because the certificate, stuff it's good too. I do buy organically certified things, but, sometimes it's from Chile or who knows where. Well, I want to remind our listeners that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, and my guest today is mushroom expert Jeff Chilton, and we're talking about all things mushroom. You can find him at Nammex.com. So, Jeff, what about the fact that people sometimes worry, and it is true, that supplements brought in from China have at times been contaminated with heavy metals?
Well, you know what? I mean, that's absolutely true. Supplements from anywhere, Ellen. And I think this is the main point, is that you have to, when you're choosing a supplement, you have to ask around, know who the company is that's selling the supplement. I mean, I would say a lot of the supplements that are like what you're talking about are supplements that are sold on the internet. They're not necessarily sold in the stores where they have to have a different relationship, and they're companies that maybe have been around a long time. So no matter where it comes from, it could be contaminated with heavy metals. I mean, my goodness, even in the United States there are areas and foods and supplements that are contaminated. So really, and what I would say too is that the natural products industry is highly regulated. People don't really understand that, but it is highly regulated. However, that doesn't mean the government's going to go in there and test every product. They can't possibly do that. So it's up to the people growing the products and supplying the products. And believe me, when I go to sell my products, I cannot sell them unless they meet these standards, and I have to provide a certificate of analysis with every single product. And if those companies who buy my products are doing their due diligence, they can just go ahead and test what I'm selling them to verify the information that I'm providing on my certificate of analysis. So really, it's something where you have to know, the company that you're buying from, what that brand is. If you trust that brand, talk to others, talk to people at the store, and even call them up. You can do that as well.
Well, let's talk about what some of the specific mushrooms that you like best are. You did talk about shiitake, maitake. What are some of the other ones that are really useful?
Well, today the market cannot get enough of the lion's mane. The
lion's mane. That's a good one to talk about.
Going crazy right now, and it's interesting. There's a whole category out there now called nootropics, and a nootropic is something that is will help us in terms of our capabilities. So if it helps with brain function or some kind of caffeine would be a perfect nootropic. So nootropics now are a whole category, and lion's mane actually has shown the ability to stimulate what's called nerve growth factor. Nerve growth factor is responsible for producing neurites and neurons. So we've got our nerve cells, our neurons are dying off and being produced regularly. But as we get older, that production goes down. Lion's mane has shown the ability to actually stimulate the production of neurons. And so this capability, and believe me, everybody out there would like to have a little better memory. And as we get older, our memory tends to fade away a little bit, and we really are looking for something like lion's mane. So it has become probably the most popular mushroom that we sell right now. It is, and there's so many different products out there that use lion's mane, but that's a mushroom that has a very specific activity that people really want right now, lion's mane. So if people would like to try it at some point, they definitely should and see whether it helps them out. But the nice thing about lion's mane is there's actually been clinical trials on lion's mane, and that's something, as you know, are very difficult to find when it comes to herbal products. It's just too expensive for most companies to do a clinical trial. But there are high-quality clinical trials that have demonstrated this activity, and these trials were done in Japan.
So that is a newer one on the market. Although, does it have that long-term tradition of use as well?
That is absolutely a newer one that's on the market. In fact, 4 years ago, I don't think I sold hardly any lion's mane. Today, we sell more of it than any other product. Another one out there that's really interesting is called cordyceps. Cordyceps, which is also called the caterpillar fungus, grows wild on the highland prairies of Tibet. People actually, it's a caterpillar that hibernates over the winter time. It's colonized by a fungus. The caterpillar never awakens in the spring, but what happens is you get a little tiny mushroom that comes up off that caterpillar, and people are on their hands and knees actually harvesting it. It's been used for centuries for neurasthenia, for people who are tired, weak, trying to get energy back from an illness. So it's a very, very well-known and utilized herbal product in China. The beauty of cordyceps now, because that believe it or not, that caterpillar fungus reached a point where 2 or 3 years ago it was selling for $20,000 for a dried kilogram of it, which made it pretty much inexpensive. Plus, when I tried to introduce it into the market 25 years ago, everyone said to me, you know what, nobody wants to eat caterpillars. And
I know, but it's a big thing, and it has been used as a traditional remedy for thousands of years and is amazing as an adaptogenic and has so many proven qualities. But we are actually out of time. I want to thank you so much for being our guest today, and I want to thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Herbally Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. You can find out more about our guest Jeff and all his work with mushrooms by visiting his website at Nammex, that's NAMMEX.com. And for further information, you can email us at WHPC@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamai at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.